The Patrick Riggins Show. Call in now, 865-243-TALK. That's 243-8255. And now your host, Patrick Riggins.
Welcome to the Patrick Riggins Show, the show breaking the speed limit of radio shows. We pack so much into 1 hour that we have no choice. And even though we are speeding, we still cannot get to everything. And blowing through this radio space-time continuum is the supercharged, nitro-fueled station WNOX FM 100.3. You can also tune us in on the internet at www.wnoxfm.com. There you will see us here in the studio, courtesy of our webcam, working at breakneck speed to bring you all the show we can legally pack into this hour. That is, without getting pulled over by the man. Riding shotgun on the show and making sure everything is running smoothly is our producer, Tori. I will give him an official apology for not making the gig last night at the well. I was trying to get this show pulled together. I don't know how good of an excuse that is. So, did it go well out there, though?
Oh, yeah. I mentioned last week that, you'd be signing autographs, and you would not believe the line we had just waiting, just chanting, Patrick, Patrick, Pat. And, boy, were they just upset.
Hey, you're getting me confused with Posey. Everybody'd show up to sign autographs for him. Yeah, he's much bigger than I am.
It turned out to be a good show. The Treatment played as well. The name of the band was The Treatment, and Big Bad Oven was the name of the other band.
Bad Oven.
Yeah, so everything went good. The Well, cool place down there. So if you got a chance, go down there and check it out. It's for musicians by musicians. So it's a cool little groove.
Anything else coming up, or?
Nope, that's it on the books for right now.
So, well, hopefully one of these days I'm gonna make
Square
it to
Garden
somewhere
next month. Maybe.
Oh, is it MSG? Yeah. Cool. Yeah. So
Maynardville Square Garden.
Maynardville Square Garden, Morristown Square Garden.
I'm just going to go home, kick back, enjoy the weather.
Yeah,
that's cool.
I'm not going to mention it because everyone does. And
mention what?
Yeah, exactly. I'm so sick of hearing about it. Yes, I know it's hot.
It's warm today.
So
probably be warm tomorrow.
If we all lived outside in tents, I could see you complaining about it. But 99% of the people have AC.
Well, it's a dry heat though.
Yeah, exactly.
No, it's a hot heat.
It's a wet heat.
It's a hot heat.
A hot heat. All right. First off, I want to thank everyone again for tuning into the show today. It has been a fun-filled week of interesting goings-ons, and combined with all that, this week is the 4th of July, a celebration of America and its founding. Unfortunately, if our founders could see what we have done with their country, they would probably line us up in front of a firing squad. And I can't say I would blame them. We are rapidly losing what our country used to stand for: freedom and liberty from government meddling and control. One of the things which is speeding us along this destructive path is this whole war on terror and its chief spinoff, the TSA. This bunch out there is single-handedly doing more destruction to our rights and freedoms than just about any other government agency could. All in the name of protecting us from some mythical threat of terror. Well, for example, let's take the most visible part of the TSA, the outright circumventing of our rights in the airport. Now, what exactly is this supposed to accomplish? Protecting us from terrorists? Let's look at it logically. What do terrorists want to do? They want to maximize the terror of the population of a country. So why blow up a plane? These guys aren't stupid. They know the minute that anyone tries anything, the passengers are going to be wiping the floor with their guy. So does anyone still think that if someone really wanted to bring down an airline, it couldn't be done? I mean, just go out and look at the final approach to any airport in this country. When planes are coming in that part of the approach, it's a condition called low, slow, and flying dirty. In this configuration, it is particularly vulnerable to attack. So is this some big secret? No. Look at our southern border. We have so many illegals coming across that it makes for a huge debate in our country. The government knows the numbers are so large that the Democrats are trying to get them legalized so they can vote. That is how many are sneaking in. And with all these people, how hard would it be, really, for someone bent on causing a problem in this country to cross along with everyone else? Well, not very. With all the drugs that are being smuggled into this country each year, how hard would it be to bring along a Stinger missile strapped to your back? Again, no problem. Let's say you cannot find a Stinger. How about a rocket launcher? Now you may be saying, be realistic, Patrick. Yeah, exactly, as Tori says.
Be realistic, Patrick.
Well, LAPD has recovered rocket launchers during raids of street gangs for years. So we have the necessary ingredients to cause a really bad accident. We have the person wanting to do it, we have the equipment to do it, and we have multiple places from which to carry out the mission. Why has it not been happening yet? And don't give me the bull that is because of the TSA. There is nothing they've been able to do to stop any of these ingredients for terror to be in place. So again, why has it not happened? Maybe because we're being sold a bill of goods on this whole war of terror. But why? What's the reasoning behind that? It's because the government wants this war on terror so they can justify taking more of your freedoms and liberties. And with an undefined war on terror, essentially an unending war, you will never get them back. Businesses want it because there is a whole lot of money to be made by selling materials and services in support of this war on terror. Wars make money, good money, and easy money. Very rarely does one question an expenditure on a war-related item. No one wants to be the person seen as depriving our people of an important item to help them fight. This results in a vicious cycle of more rights lost, more spending. More rights lost, more spending. And on until we as the American people break this cycle. The way to do this is by voting in people who will defend these or defund these freedom-robbing and money-wasting agencies and give the country back to the people who make it work. Us, the American citizens who celebrate freedom during this week, the 4th of July. This show, we're going to have lots to get to. We're going to talk about the Supreme Court ruling from an angle you're probably not going to hear anywhere else, along with a few other related things during this very short hour. This is Patrick Riggins with The Patrick Riggins Show. We'll be back.
Fighting for freedom, liberty, and the restoration of the Constitution. The Patrick Riggins Show. Call in now at 865-243-8255. That's 243-TALK. And now your host, Patrick Riggins.
Welcome back. This is Patrick Riggins with the Patrick Riggins Show. And we're just jumping right into the show today. We got a lot to cover. And obviously because of this week, if you weren't sleeping all week, you realized the Supreme Court ruled that Obamacare was constitutional under the mandate, under the premise that it is a tax, not a mandate. Now, I'm not going to sit here and rehash all of the debate that has been occurring this week on television, the print and internet media, even here on talk radio. But as to the argument about this being a tax, if you miss the start of this show each week and you just don't pay attention, here is part of what is played at the first of this show.
Spending is a tax. As soon as the government spends money, eventually it's a tax. Sometimes we put a direct tax on the people, sometimes we borrow the money, and sometimes we print the money.
In case you didn't get that, any and all government spending is a tax. It doesn't matter what it is used for, since the government does not make anything. It doesn't produce anything. All of the money that it spends has to come from somewhere else. So instead of talking about all this sideshow stuff going on with this bill, I'm going to direct your attention to the center ring, where I'm going to offer the reason behind why all of this is happening. And this is something you will not hear on any other radio show. That is because there is no other radio show like this one. That is why this show is growing by leaps and bounds. It isn't all due to the fact that, well, I'm extremely handsome and erudite, but Really, this show is one of the few shows that tackle these questions because I'm not afraid of offending the political ruling class. I happen to believe in the American people and the fact that they will make good decisions more times than not. How else can you explain how successful America has become? Personally, I think the American people have triumphed in spite of the misguided and failed policies of politicians who think they know more than we do. But getting back to this Supreme Court ruling, why did they rule the way they did? Why did Chief Justice Roberts rewrite the law from the bench in order to make it work? I've stated it on this show before, but I'll say it again for all the new listeners who are constantly tuning in each week. The government is getting comfortable with trampling on the Constitution, which in turn is trampling on your rights and liberties. The reason it is becoming comfortable with this is because we are letting our elected representatives and their cohorts in these government agencies get away with it. Whenever a question about whether someone in government has the authority to do a certain thing, all they have to do is look around and see that other agencies are getting away with whatever they want to do, so it must be okay. And if it isn't, then the people affected are only going to be suing that agency. The government has demonstrated time and again that it will go to bat for its people, that it will take the bullet for the unconstitutional and unauthorized behavior of its employees. So, what do the employees have to lose by not abiding by the rules? Nothing. And what do you have to lose by not abiding by the arbitrary and sometimes ridiculous rules the government comes up with? Well, everything. Government doesn't have to obey its rules. Heck, it doesn't even obey the Constitution. But if you try that, you'll be fined, punished, and maybe even imprisoned. The worst that government employee is going to get is maybe fired. But their boss will just pick up the phone, call his friend who runs another one of the hundreds of government agencies, and get this employee hired there. And they'll even get to keep their nice fat pension and cushy government health and benefits plan. All the while, we're trimming away another branch off the American tree of freedom and liberty. Because as the owners of that tree, we, the American people, are not paying attention to what is happening. Until one day, we are going to look out into our yard, and all we're going to have left of that tree are some little scraggly branches piled up at the street, waiting for the government to haul off the last pieces of a once mighty tree of freedom and liberty. And when our grandchildren ask about it, we'll talk about how grand that tree was and how it provided shade to millions of oppressed people looking for a better life. But we allowed it to be pruned back so much that it finally died. And now it has been incinerated in the furnace of governmental control. And unfortunately, a lot of American citizens allowed it to happen because they were promised the security and safety of heat and light from the burning of that tree. But now that it has been reduced to ashes, they have nothing. Neither the shade of freedom and liberty, nor the safety and security promised them. The key is to stop government from pruning away our freedom and liberty, and to start fertilizing and watering until once again we have a strong and tall tree capable of providing protection to millions of people seeking refuge under its branches. So ask yourself why the Supreme Court ruled as it did. Because we have let them. We have told the people in Washington that we don't mind losing freedom and liberty here and there if it'll give us some type of perceived security. We must start rolling back this mindset in Washington and at all levels of government. Because the more you let it get away with, the more it is going to try to do. The simple solution is stop asking your fellow citizens to pay for your life. And that is what you're doing with government-sponsored health care, or governmental anything. You are telling the taxpayers of this country that you cannot afford to pay for something, so now they have to provide it for you. And don't call up telling me your sob story on how your grandmother couldn't afford her health care, or your son has some disease which is bankrupting your finances. I'm sorry. Believe me, I'm truly sorry if something like that is happening to you or someone you know. But does that overrule my rights and freedoms? Does the fact that life is not fair, that things don't always work out here on earth, is that my fault? And if it isn't, then why am I having to pay for it? Now, if I donate to a campaign to raise funds for your deathly ill grandmother or your son with a disease he didn't ask for, then that's perfectly fine. And we see that type of thing happening all the time. In fact, you can read a story about that in our local paper just yesterday. People will always reach out to help those who are less fortunate. Believe me, I know. But to demand that the government take money from one citizen and give it to another in the form of direct payments of money or services, you cannot argue that is the right thing to do. It is theft, plain and simple. And by receiving those payments of other people's money, you are an accessory to theft. You are in possession of stolen property. And to try and justify it in any way just condemns your actions even more. Now, if this offends you, I invite you to listen to this clip from one of my very first shows. More times than not in life, the truth is not pretty, and it is not easy. It is usually hard, and you end up taking a stand that is frequently assaulted from both the left and the right. So you see, sometimes you may not agree with what is being said on this show, but you can trust a lot of thought from a libertarian, and I would argue a purely American point of view has gone into formulating the opinion. Incidentally, I'll mention this real quick. If you'd like to hear more of this type of thing, if this show, this little monologue part of this segment has got you thinking, you can go to our YouTube channel now, and there we're posting all of our archive shows, and you can go back and listen to those. The address for that is youtube.com and then / Patrick Riggins Show. That's all together. So if you type in youtube.com and then / and then Patrick Riggins Show with no spaces in between the words. If that's too complicated, you can just go to youtube.com and type in Patrick Riggins Show into the search box, and it'll give you the whole listing. And you can go back and listen to some of these past shows. But what you're going to hear all the time on this show is a consistency in individual responsibility. We don't fudge that for anyone. And if this last little monologue didn't convince you of that, I don't know what will. Starting today, July 1st, the welfare recipient, new welfare recipients will have to undergo a special screening process to determine if they may need to be tested for drug use. In a story on knoxnews.com this week, welfare recipient Travonda Brown was quoted saying that she is concerned about the repercussions of people losing their benefits through this new law. Her actual quote was, "If someone next door to you loses their check and food stamps, what do you think they're going to do?" Unquote. So, and Miss Brown, by the way, lives in the housing project with her 4 children and is clearly worried that instead of maybe these people who are losing their benefits getting a job to earn money, they're going to turn to robbing and stealing. Of course, if we made the penalty for robbing and stealing stiff enough, then robbing and stealing would not occur on nearly the regular basis that it does. You see, an odd thing happens when you have swift and effectual justice. It makes people think twice before committing a crime. But if all you do is slap someone's hand for a seemingly small infraction, then you're going to encourage more of it. And in the aggregate, it becomes a bigger problem. That is something many liberals and even conservatives fail to see, that excusing small crimes frequently leads to bigger ones later on. The first crime is always the hardest, so it's usually the smallest attempted. And then as a person gets used to committing crime, it gets easier and easier with each one. Until one day this person is committing a felony, and we claim to not understand how this, quote, petty thief could get all tangled up in something that big. The key is to punish crimes committed against another person, and notice I said against another person, quickly and effectively. This would reduce these crimes, and society would ultimately benefit. Even though it seems like tough love is harsh, it is the best thing for people who sometimes, well, they need a kick in the pants to straighten out their lives. We're coming up on the bottom of the break here on the Patrick Riggins Show. We will be coming back after a couple of messages here with even more, a couple of things about the Republican Weekly Address and the American Dream and how it's getting redefined. This is Patrick Riggins with the Patrick Riggins Show. We'll be back in a couple of minutes. You thought you knew radio before, and then came me. This is Patrick Riggins with the Patrick Riggins Show. All right, getting into it here. We've got a lot we're trying to cram into on this this segment here. We've got a couple of calls holding. We'll try to get to them as well. On this week of the Supreme Court ruling on Obamacare, the Republicans talked about health care once again in their weekly address. For the second week in a row, it was given by a senator, or given by a physician who is also a senator. This time it was Dr. John Barrasso from Wyoming. And we're going to just kind of run through this real quick, because this is basically showing you how all of these guys are pretty much the same in Washington. So anyway, to set the stage for the address, he starts out by laying the groundwork to attack the president on his assertion that the new law was not a tax.
On Thursday, I was in the courtroom as the Supreme Court ruled that the president's health care law is what the president claimed it was not, a new tax.
So the mandate is actually a tax, and the Republicans are correct in hanging this ruling around the president's head, because over and over he emphatically stated it was not a tax. So what did the American people receive from the Obamacare law instead of free choice and lower prices?
Under President Obama's health care law, they got the exact opposite. Tax increases and government control.
Tax increases and government control. That is what Obamacare means for America. But what about the Republicans? Does government control figure into their solution as well?
That means common sense solutions, like allowing premium breaks to encourage healthy behavior.
Allowing premium breaks to encourage healthy behavior. So who's going to determine what healthy behavior involves? Why, the government, of course. But I guess the Republicans don't see that as government control. Their goal, though, is repealing Obamacare. And they are determined to not have a repeat of this problem.
We will not make the same mistakes the Democrats made.
And to demonstrate that the Republicans are fully behind this, here is a clip from last week's Republican address given by another physician and congressman from Louisiana, Dr. Bill Cassidy.
It's important to know that Republicans will not repeat Democrats' mistakes.
All right, so the Republicans are determined to not repeat the Democrats' mistakes. Here is a list of things they are going to avoid.
We will not raise taxes in the middle of a recession.
That's not to say they won't raise taxes. They just aren't going to do it in the middle of a recession. But they'll consider doing it at the start of one, or the end, or even while we are riding high on a wave of expansion. How do they even know when we are in the middle of a recession? Can they see the end of it? Do they know when it ends so they can determine the middle? No, of course not. But it sure makes a good soundbite, doesn't it?
We will not push through a 2,700-page bill the American people can't afford and don't want.
No, Republicans never push through a 2,700-page bill, let alone one we cannot afford. We never get stories of Congress voting on huge bills that no one has read. And by the way, here's a news flash for Republicans and the rest of Congress. We cannot afford half of what you're doing now. So what are the Republicans going to do? They're going to appeal Obamacare.
Now we have another chance to reform our health care system, and in a way that does not result in higher costs, in fewer choices, and in less personal control. Once we have repealed the law, we will tackle the serious problems that plagued our health care system and are now getting worse.
And from last week?
So unless the court throws out the entire law, we should repeal what is left and implement common sense, step-by-step reforms that protect Americans' access to the care they need from the doctor they choose at the lowest cost.
Did you hear that? The Republicans are going to repeal Obamacare. But since they don't trust you to take care of yourself either, they are going to implement what they see as a fix.
We will replace this law with real reforms that will actually lower costs and improve access to care.
And again from last week,
it's now clear, if it wasn't already, that containing costs step by step, not expanding government in one fell swoop, is the right approach to healthcare reform.
So the government is going to get involved, which is going to lower cost. When has that ever happened? But have no fear. You are still the most important person in this equation.
What we will do is make sure that our healthcare system is truly patient-centered, not government-centered.
And again from last week,
that means implementing patient-centered solutions that lower cost and restore Americans' freedoms over their healthcare decisions.
You see, all these guys are worried about is you. All they want is the best for you. And if you will just set aside some of your freedoms and liberties and allow the government to take care of you. And they aren't going to throw all this regulation and bureaucracy at you all at once like those evil Democrats and their president want to do. No, they are going to implement these freedom-robbing regulations little by little.
Republicans in Congress are committed to a step-by-step approach that's focused on lowering the cost of care.
And here's last week.
We should seize this opportunity to protect jobs and work together on a step-by-step reform that will do what Obamacare did not do, which is to lower the cost of health care for families and small businesses.
Okay, so what is the ultimate goal?
Now we have another chance to reform our health care system, and in a way that does not result in higher costs, in fewer choices, and in less personal control. It is time for Washington to repeal the president's health care law and replace it with real health care reform.
And this one from last week I just played, but it's good to hear it again.
So unless the court throws out the entire law, we should repeal what is left and implement common sense step-by-step reforms that protect Americans' access to the care they need from the doctor they choose at the lowest cost.
Okay, these are just two congressmen that for the last 2 weeks have been laying the groundwork for the Republicans' idea of how the government should run health care. But what does Mitt Romney have to say about this? Does he agree that government should be running everyone's health care? Well, let's listen to his clip here.
I got to improve health care by getting it to work more like a consumer market and less like a government-dominated utility, and I will repeal and replace Obamacare.
Yep, repeal and replace Obamacare. What are they replacing it with? I guess we'll find out, but here is an idea. Why not just get the government totally out of this? That would lower costs, it would increase access, and result in more people getting better health care. But neither side believes that. They are all big government knows best people. So it is going to be up to us to make sure they get this law repealed, and then pressure them to get government out of health care altogether. Now, will it be easy? No, of course not. But doing the right thing rarely is. But does that mean we don't try? As long as I have this radio show, I'm going to try. I'll tell you that. It is up to you, the listening audience of this show, to get others to change their minds about how government should work. And having them tune into this show every Sunday afternoon at 4 p.m. would be a really good start. Another way you can do that, which I'll give us a little plug again, is you can direct them to our Facebook page at facebook.com/Patrick Riggins Show. And that's facebook.com with the / and then Patrick Riggins Show all together. As I noted during the last segment, we also have that new YouTube channel at youtube.com / Patrick Riggins Show. You can see all of our most of our archive shows there. We'll continue adding them as we work through them. We have to do a little bit of editing on those to take out some of the extraneous music and everything. So That way you don't waste your time listening to that. You can just get to the meat of what we're talking about here. If you have a topic or something on there, too, that you're talking to someone about and you can't remember quite what you heard on the show, you can just direct them to that, and they can get some a good attitude, a better attitude about this government thing, government being involved in your life. It'll give them some good information on that. Anyway, we're coming up on the last segment. Boy, this show just flies by. This is Patrick Riggins with the Patrick Riggins Show. We'll be back with the last segment of the show. We'll get into a little bit of the American dream and maybe one other thing if we have time. We'll see you in a couple of minutes.
Fighting for freedom, liberty, and the restoration of the Constitution. The Patrick Riggins Show. Call in now at 865-243-8255. That's 243-TALK. And now your host, Patrick Riggins.
Welcome back. This is the Patrick Riggins Show, the bulwark of libertarianism here, coming at you live here with Tori here in the studio, and we're sitting around talking. You know, if you don't watch on the webcam, you really need to. So what we need to do is figure out a way to get with the station management and say, hey, I want to sell a subscription, and you can hear what's being said during the webcam. No. Yeah. Tori votes no on that.
No. Are you insane?
Yeah. All right.
We cannot let them into the inner circle.
Yeah.
It's our own government. They can't see.
Yeah, you're not that benevolent.
Pay no attention to the man behind the curtain.
The man behind the curtain, exactly. All right. Real quick here during this last segment, I want to get to something that's been bugging me a little, and it's this that quietly and surreptitiously happening over the years here in America, and you probably wouldn't be alerted to this unless you're listening to this radio show, but there is a redefining of the American dream. The American dream used to mean that here in America we are all created equal, and that we all have the chance to be successful. It didn't depend on whether the government was there or not, or whether there was a handout for us. It means that we took care of ourselves. And when we succeeded, it was because we worked hard and made it happen. But now President Obama, and not just to pick on him, because a lot of people in this country believe exactly as he does, but the president is trying to take apart the original American dream and replace it with this bastardized big government definition. So to get this started, just listen to this first clip here.
They want to know that if they work hard and live within their means, everything will be all right. They'll be able to get ahead and give their kids a better life.
So if you work hard and live within your means, everything will be all right. But the truth is, it might not be. That is the risk. But no one wants that risk anymore. And the government is more than willing to tell people it can mitigate that risk if they will just give up some of their freedom. Here is Obama's version of the American dream.
The bedrock of our economic success is the American dream. It's a dream shared in big cities and small towns across races, regions, and religions, that if you work hard, you can support a family. That if you get sick, there will be health care that you can afford. You can retire with the dignity and security and respect that you've earned. That your children can get a good education, and young people can go to college even if they don't come from a wealthy family.
So a job, health care, college, all of this is the American dream?
Sounds good.
Yeah, but you'd be wrong. He is completely wrong. None of this is required for the American dream. Here again, he keeps trying to sell that college, though, as part of that.
For the young people, who have the grades, the will, and the drive to go to college, but still don't have the money, and are having to further their dreams further and further into the future until maybe those dreams just go away.
College is not the American dream. Many immigrants come here without a college education and have lived the American dream. So college cannot be it. So if none of these things are it, then what is the American dream? It's simple. It is the freedom to live your life without interference from government. But Patrick, you say, The American dream is material success, as Tori was just doing. I anticipated that argument coming.
What you said.
And I've been told over and over that going to college, getting a good job, becoming successful, that's the American dream. Okay, if that is true, that stuff happens all around the world. Why single out America and call it the American dream? No, it is freedom. Because freedom and liberty, like we used to have in this country, is what made it great. Other countries have jobs. Other countries have health care. Other countries have college-educated people. But the rare gem we have is freedom, what many countries don't have. That is the American dream. All the other things are the results and rewards of the American dream. And that is precisely why Obama and others want to redefine the American dream, because, frankly, they don't want you having that much freedom. They want to gather you into a nice community, just like the good old Soviets, and destroy any individual freedoms and liberties you might harbor. Just listen to this next clip.
As a country that prizes both our individual freedom and our obligations to one another, this is one of the most important debates that we can have.
See, he is telling us we prize our individual freedom, which he has to put in there to make it the next part go down easier. Our obligations to one another. We don't have obligations to one another. No one in a free country is obligated to do anything. But Obama, being a socialist, he doesn't see it that way.
But no matter what we argue or where we stand, we have always held certain beliefs as Americans. We believe that in order to preserve our own freedoms and pursue our own happiness, we can't just think about ourselves. We have to think about the country that made those liberties possible. We have to think about our fellow citizens with whom we share a community. We have to think about what's required to preserve the American dream for future generations.
Well, let's take that first part. He is trying to define what we hold dear as Americans.
But no matter what we argue or where we stand, we have always held certain beliefs as Americans.
Okay, and what are those beliefs, Mr. President?
We believe that in order to preserve our own freedoms and pursue our own happiness, we can't just think about ourselves. We have to think about the country that made those liberties possible.
To preserve our own freedom and pursue our own happiness, we have to think about the country that made those liberties possible. See, Obama's way of thinking is that the government makes liberty possible. And by country, he means government. You are not born with liberty. It is granted by the government. So what is his goal?
To restore an America where everyone has a fair shot, everyone does their fair share, and everybody plays by the same rules.
He wants to restore America where everyone has a fair shot, everyone has a fair shake, and everyone plays by the same rules. And who is going to make sure that happens? The government, of course. The American dream is defined by Obama as being a good and loyal citizen, dutifully going to work, paying your taxes, and living according to how the government wants you to live. And only then are you living the American dream. If you see, it's much easier to change the definition of something than to change people. By changing the definition of the American dream, people will begin to work towards that instead of that pesky old definition we used to have of everyone having freedom and liberty and being created equal. If Obama and his little band of like-minded socialists can redefine the American dream so that the results and rewards are what define it, then only the fact that you have them will matter, not how you got them. If the government is the one providing that outcome, then people will start to see it as integral to achieving this new definition of the American dream. In doing so, the government will be just one step closer to defeating these ideas of freedom and liberty. So when you hear these people, and as I said, I'm not just picking on President Obama. There's a lot of people that believe this way. But when you hear someone defining the American dream as the results of American dream or the rewards of living here in America, make sure you set them straight. Because the American dream is not what you've got, is not what you're looking around if you have a big house and a big car. The American dream is freedom, because that's what makes this country special. None of the other things. Other countries have all those other things. What we had is freedom, and that's the anomaly. Amen, Brother Patrick. All right, we're coming up on the last of the show here. And again, I want to thank everyone for listening and making this show just incredibly successful week after week. If you'd like to get more information about this, and I've been shamelessly plugging this the whole show, you can go to our Facebook page at facebook.com/Patrick Riggins Show. And be sure and hit that like button on Facebook. We're also on Twitter at Patrick Riggins, and on YouTube at youtube.com/Patrick Riggins Show. Join me next Sunday afternoon when once again we'll talk about freedom, liberty, and the restoration of the Constitution. This is Patrick Riggins, and we'll see you next Sunday. Have a fantastic week.
Join us again next week for a solid dose of truth on the Patrick Riggins Show every Sunday from 4 to 5 p.m. Be there.